There is a moth at your porch light tonight. You have probably stopped noticing her. She is just there, circling, circling, framed in that pale corona of light, wings dusted like ash against the warm air. You leave the door open a moment too long and she drifts inside, and your first instinct is the same instinct it has always been. A cupped hand, a rolled magazine, the switch that plunges everything into darkness and lets the problem solve itself. Wait, before you do anything else, I need you to stay with her for a moment. Because what she is doing out there, the thing that looks like mindless orbit, like something broken, is one of the most carefully constructed acts of navigation in the natural world. And your garden has been depending on her survival in ways you have never been asked to think about. She belongs to the order Lepidoptera, a name she shares with butterflies, though the comparison requires some correction. Butterflies are not the original design. Moths are. The lineage that became Lepidoptera emerged roughly 190 million years ago, predating the first flowering plants, predating anything resembling the garden you are standing outside tonight. Butterflies evolved from within the moth lineage around 100 million years ago. They are a subclade, a branch, a later experiment. What you have at your porch light is the older architecture. There are approximately 160,000 described species of moths, roughly 10 times the number of butterfly species. They are not the diminished version of the thing you find beautiful. They are the origin. The species at your light has never touched your clothing. That distinction belongs to Tiniola biseliella, the common clothes moth, a small, pale creature that avoids light entirely and bears almost no resemblance to what is circling outside your door. She is not interested in your wool sweater, not interested in your pantry. What she was doing before your light intercepted her is something worth understanding. She was navigating by the moon. This is not a metaphor. Moths use a technique called transverse orientation, holding the moon at a fixed angle relative to their body and adjusting each wing beat to maintain that angle. Because the moon sits at effective infinity, that angle never changes as they move, and the system produces straight-line travel across miles of darkness. Scientists tracking individual moths in flight under natural night skies have confirmed this. Their paths hold remarkably true over hundreds of meters, the product of a navigational system refined across tens of millions of years of flight. Then your porch light appeared. Unlike the moon, it is close enough that the angle it presents shifts with every wing beat of her orbit. Her nervous system, calibrated over evolutionary time to a light source at infinite distance, attempts to correct the angle continuously, and each correction pulls her tighter into the spiral you are watching. What looks like aimless circling is a precise instrument encountering a problem it was never designed to solve. Let that settle for a moment. She was going somewhere. Your light is why she is no longer getting there. Now consider where. If she is a female, she was searching for flowers, but not the ones you tend in daylight. Night-blooming plants evolved on an entirely separate schedule. Evening primrose, white campion, night-blooming jasmine, moonflower, tobacco flowers. These plants do not open for bees. Bees have returned to their hives. Their petals time themselves to unfurl after dusk, their fragrance compounds designed to travel on cool, dense night air. Their nectar concentrated for the visitor that works in darkness. She hovers at a pale trumpet-shaped flower, extends her proboscis, and moves pollen that nothing else will touch tonight. No beekeeper maintains a hive that works past midnight. No butterfly garden operates after dark. What she provides is not supplemental to what bees do. She is the only one working this shift. Research published in the journal Biology Letters found that moths visit nearly half of all plant species that daytime pollinators visit, and that a substantial portion of those plants receive nighttime moth visits exclusively. For those plants, she is the entire pollination strategy. The evening primrose that bloomed in your garden last week may have been pollinated by a moth you will never see. If she is a male, his story runs on a different but equally precise track. He has been following a chemical signal across miles of night air, a pheromone released by a female somewhere in the darkness, present in concentrations measured in parts per trillion. His antennae, those elaborate branching structures that make moths look unsettling to some people, are tuned to that signal with a sensitivity that makes any instrument we have built look blunt. He corrects for crosswinds. He loses the signal and reacquires it. He has been traveling, possibly for several miles, toward a specific destination he cannot see and has never seen. He is not wandering. He is homing. But the most important role moths play in your garden does not happen in the air at all. Entomologist Douglas Tallamy spent years tracing what happens to bird populations when caterpillar numbers fall in residential landscapes. What he found changes how you will think about every moth you have ever killed or dismissed. A single pair of Carolina chickadees needs to deliver between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars to their nest before one clutch of chicks can fledge, not insects in general. Caterpillars specifically, soft-bodied, protein-dense, the right size for a nestling's throat. And the overwhelming majority of those caterpillars are moth larvae, not butterfly larvae. Moth larvae because moths are more numerous, more species diverse, and more broadly distributed across the plant life of any residential garden than butterflies by a wide margin. The moth circling your light tonight, if she survives and reaches a suitable host plant, will lay eggs. Those eggs become caterpillars. Those caterpillars become the food that raises the birds that work your garden from spring through late summer. The chickadee pulling aphids from your rose bush. The wren hunting spider mites along your vegetable rows. The warbler arriving at your trees each spring and staying long enough to nest. None of them can sustain their populations without what moths leave behind. She is not a peripheral detail in your garden's ecology. She is part of its structure, and you have been turning the light on every night. That is not a judgment. It is a description of what has been happening, quietly and without visible consequence, for a long time. It is not a pest. It is a load-bearing species. Consider what the numbers already show. Long-term insect monitoring in Britain, some of the most thorough population data collected anywhere in the world, has documented a 40% decline in large moth species over 4 decades. Researchers tracking songbird populations in the same period are watching the figures converge. Fewer moths mean fewer caterpillars, mean fewer birds returning to breed. The quiet you may have noticed in recent springs, fewer songs at dawn, fewer nests, fewer summer visitors staying long enough to raise young. Is this? It is already measurable. It is already underway. Your porch light is one point on a very large map, but it is your point, and it is the one you can change tonight. Warm spectrum LED bulbs, marketed as amber or warm white, with a color temperature below 2700 Kelvin, are significantly less disruptive to moth navigation than the blue-white lights most exterior fixtures use. Motion-sensitive fittings that switch off when no one is present give her the intervals of darkness she needs to find her bearing and continue. If you have garden space, evening primrose, white phlox, and native night-blooming plants feed the moths whose larvae your birds will need in spring. And if you find a moth resting on your wall, your window screen, or your fence post during the day, that is precisely where she should be. She is waiting for dark. Leave her. She is not drawn to your light the way the old saying implies. She is trapped by it. She is trying to get past it. And what is waiting on the other side, what she was navigating toward before you came home and switched